Association, as well as on the board of the counselors at the USC School of Cinematic Arts. It's a lot of boards. Sarah, welcome to World of Dads.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Oren, and great to talk to you.
Absolutely. Okay, now, where do you think like gaming is going to have like the most growth over the next decade?
Oh, wow. Well, look, there's already 3 billion people in the world who play games. A lot of people don't think of it that way.
Is that like how do you think? Is it like a month? Like they play game at least once a month, once a day, once a week? Like what's that?
We normally do monthly is how we think about it, right? And there's like 200 million people who play on console. You know, there's another billion of people who play on PC, but almost everybody in the world who has high-speed internet plays on mobile as well. So when you add it all together, you've got, you know, a huge portion of the world playing games. And so when I think about where the growth areas are,
in your head is Wordle a game? Like
it's totally a game.
Okay, yeah,
exactly. That's why people like, I don't play games. Like, do you play Wordle? You're like, yes. So like, do you play games? I mean, like to play is like fundamentally human.
Absolutely.
It's how you learn. It's how you connect. You know, think back to things you did on the playground when you were like 5 years old, right? Like they were games, you know, like hide and seek and ring around the rosy and chase and all of those things, right? And that's actually very, very fundamental to humanity. And so translating into a digital environment, supernatural. And when we have done a ton of analysis on it, it basically turns out that if someone has access to high-speed internet, they're playing some digital game of some type. You know, maybe Minesweeper or Solitaire on your PC, or you know, something more immersive like, you know, a Call of Duty or a Halo. So to me, the greatest places it's going to grow is actually in regions of the world that are getting that access, in India and Africa, and places with huge, huge populations of people who are sort of on the cusp of getting that type of regular access to high-speed connectivity and immersive play.
And what does your team is like really invested in game developers and democratizing game development? Like, what does that look like? Like, are we going to just have like 100x number of game developers in the future?
I think we absolutely will. The thing is that if you look at all forms of media, they used to all be in this very professionalized state, and we've seen as technical tools
like movies or something
movies, technical tools proliferated, and
now everyone's making a TikTok video,
right? And you know, similarly, if you think about that with music, right? You've seen where you had to have all these things, and now it's much more. It's possible for Justin Bieber to become a thing, right? Basically because of a viral moment. But that hasn't happened fully with gaming yet. You see examples of it. People might say, you know, Minecraft is an example, Roblox is another example, but they're not. There's constraints around them, right? Like it's in a certain world, it has a certain look and feel. We haven't totally created
like a game within a game. People create, but they're not creating like their own game
or a no-code way to build any type of game that you want, right? Like you either have to deal with a whole bunch of constraints for what the game is like, or you have to basically just code it yourself, in which case it requires a level of professionalism and organization that is accessible to everyone in the world. And that makes sense to me because games are actually much harder technically than any other form of media, in some ways than any other form of anything that I've seen. Like working within Minecraft, we look at the latency required with games, the workload, the multivariate nature of them, the fact that it includes sort of left brain and right brain. Like a game isn't just good because it performs, it's good because it's entertaining, right? And what is entertaining? Like what is joy? What is humor? What makes you keep coming back? Those are very subtle things that you need to learn to replicate and innovate on. And so we see that democratization, we see trends of it, but it's not nearly as far as music and video. So I'll give you an example. You know, if you looked at the Xbox 360 generation, the creators on our platform were largely like Electronic Arts, Activision, Take-Two,
big companies,
big companies, massive teams. Now you have it's possible that a small team can create a game that goes completely viral. A classic example, most people don't think of it this way, Fortnite was really, you know, Epic was not a huge developer when they first created Fortnite. They're a huge developer now because they've had all of the success related to it, but they were actually able to leverage that. PUBG is another example. And the reason why that can happen now is because of a whole bunch of technical tools, like an engine that makes it easier to build a game, the fact that you can digitally publish and all of those things. So you see the trend coming, and you can
write that game into many different formats. You don't have to just put it on one particular type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
How important is like graphics? When I think like when I see some of the games my kids play, like the graphics aren't like they're like slightly better than the games that I played when I was a kid. They're not, you know, so it seems like there's a certain type of gamer where like they care deeply about the graphics, and then maybe the average, maybe the average gamer doesn't care. How do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, there is no such thing as average gamer.
Yeah, okay.
You know, like it's sort of like, let's talk about what the average human likes. You know, like I mean, what you're hitting on is that there's a lot of different things that people find entertaining. And some people are really into, okay, I need to be able to have my 4K, I got my massive OLED screen, I've got 4K, I've got, do you know what I mean, 60 frames per second, and I can see it if it's not like that, and there are people 100% like that. And then there's other people who love the story of the game, or there's other people who are really into the mechanic of the game, or there's other people who are really into the connection. And so ultimately, I would say, like I say, look, like we want to deliver a level of graphic capability to the developers, so it's an option that they have. But you say, does it matter? Is it necessary to succeed? No. I mean, you brought up Wordle. Is there graphics in Wordle?
Yeah, exactly.
No. What's necessary to succeed is that you create something that brings joy to people and entertains them, and that they want to come back and do again.
And there are also like a lot of different types of games. If you think of like there are games where it's like completely immersive experience that you're going to play for hours and hours, and there's games that are kind of like, as you mentioned, like Wordle, it's like a 5-minute a day thing, and it's just kind of a fun little thing you do on the side. And you may even do it while you're watching TV, or
it's effectively a fidget spinner.
Yeah, exactly. Effectively a fidget spinner. You're doing it while you're on the commuting or something, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, 100%.
How do you think of like the creator economy intersecting with the gaming world, and how do you think that's going to evolve over time?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways it has intersected. Like if you look at a lot of tools that were born in gaming, they become tools that are relevant across the creator economy more broadly. So if you look at Unity, Unreal, those are 3D engines, but now you see people using those 3D engines to do all sorts of other things. Build a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
People use Unreal for that, and you know, create buildings or scenes or graphical interfaces. You see that, and then there's other like specialty tools. There's just one tool called SpeedTree that people use to actually sort of fill in environments in games. That's now being leveraged in all sorts of other places, including in movies and other things like that. And so people talk about them as separate. I actually think they are highly related in that gaming tools and capabilities and 3D graphics, rendering, being able to do a creative story, all of those things are sort of flowing in the creator economy, and in many ways the bedrock of it.
And how do you think of like the idea of like streaming meets gaming, whether it's like Twitch or something? I mean, I'm still flabbergasted that people watch golf. So, you know, and obviously watching someone play video games is a lot more exciting to me than watching someone, play golf. Like, how do you think of that? Like, it does seem like a lot of the gaming popularity is being driven also by like these creators who are playing the game.
Yeah, completely. I mean, people spend more hours watching games than playing games. Like that is a real stat.
Really? Oh wow,
yeah,
is that true?
It is. It's
true.
Gosh,
I had no idea. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's for a variety of reasons. I mean, I think some of it is that you do see people just love the streamers themselves, all those personalities, right? Just like you would, a personality that plays a sport or that's on TV. Some people do it because it's actually really cool to watch a person play a game well. And then some people do it because they're trying to learn how to play the game themselves. And it does feel quite intuitive. And you'll say growing up, that's what my family would do. Like one of us would sit down to play and everybody else would watch
watch it. Yeah, exactly. Or you'd have like two people playing and then the rest of the kids just kind of watching the two people and kind of cheering for them or, that type of thing. And then it's like, hey, it's my turn. Jump in.
Right. And what a platform like, YouTube gaming or Twitch has done is it's enabled to take it beyond your household and have it be anyone. It's the difference between, couch co-op and online multiplayer in terms of who you can connect with.
And how do you think of like the social piece of it? Like, and some kids I know when they play Fortnite, like they're playing with their friends and they're actually, it's really just, it's like the chatting is the social piece. But, and back in, when I was a kid 1,000 years ago, we would be on the couch together kind of playing, and that was kind of our social way of doing it. So how do you see that evolving, and where do you see like and how do you see that like affecting society?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. 70% of people under 25 would rather play a video game than engage in any other form of entertainment.
Okay.
Like including social media. It's amazing. So, and I think it's exactly for the reason that you just said, which is there's the entertainment of playing, but what it really is it's a way to connect with people. And for
they're not just playing single player mode, like they want to play with other people.
Yeah, I mean, some people do play
all over the world.
Yeah, some people do play single player mode, but the connection I think is really key, and it's different from what you and I grew up with. And it allows people to actually achieve something with someone who can live really far away. You can speak a different language, you can maintain, you can grow those relationships. We have people on our platform who have lifelong friends, best friends they've made, and they've never met them. They only play games with them, or they'll come to one of our showcases and they'll meet them for the first time and they're like crying, tears of joy, like I finally saw you in person. And I think that's really powerful because it opens up things like there's a whole set of constraints. If you say, hey, the only people I can connect with, like they need to live in my, you and I were kids, like they need to live in our neighborhood, they probably went to our school, and they need to do within a 5-minute walk because mom was okay with that. Otherwise, you organize drive and you have to keep phone numbers memorized, right? And those are the people you could call to come over to your house.
Totally.
And now that constraint is taken away and you can build that connection with people over long distances. A friend moves away, you don't lose contact with them. My daughter has someone she plays with who moved all the way to the other side of the country. And that's a really powerful thing. I'll tell a story. Like during COVID, we didn't used to let my kids play online games a lot. They were 5 and 8 when COVID started, and so we were really careful about it. But then COVID happened, and I'm like, well, what are we gonna do?
All the rules are out the window when COVID.
Rules are out the window. You're not.
We just had like just tons of candy in my house.
Yeah. We had a lot of Legos. I was like scared the Lego factory would shut down. I swear. And so we said, okay, you can play Minecraft with friends, and they started doing that because that was the only play date they could have.
Totally.
But then I realized that they were actually organizing a play date that I would never organize because they were playing with kids who lived on the other side of the city, where the transit time would be too much, on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yep.
And then they were playing with like the older cousins of of one of the kids joined in, and then some kids who had moved on the other side of the country joined in, and they were all of different ages. I was looking at it, I was like, okay, so by nature of playing through a game, a social interaction that otherwise would have never actually existed has come to exist. And so when you talk about how I think it'll shape the future, when you unlock something, it just can't happen any other way. You've unlocked something that people actually want, they desire, but would have just been so practically difficult to do, you would never do it. And that's why I think it becomes an ever more prevalent part of how our society interacts and connects.
Yeah, it's also like when I play, if I just play a game, on the internet anonymously, or something, like I have no idea who I'm playing with. Like they might be anywhere in the world. They might be of any age. They could be of any type of demographic. Sometimes you get a sense in the chat of the type of person they are, depending on like what they're talking about or how they talk, etc. But it's kind of cool because it's like I have no idea, and it's kind of this kind of interesting. You have 15 minutes together on a game, and then you kind of move on. I think it's like a really interesting piece of humanity.
Yeah, and I think of it as one of really the only way I can think of that you can share an achievement with someone. You cannot meet them. You don't know what they look like. You don't speak the same language. You might not have the same ability, right? And you can actually get something done. Not show them something you did, which is a lot of what we see in a lot of other consumer categories. But you can actually collaborate and achieve something together, and I think that's very powerful.
Now, this of course is a data podcast. Like, what are the core stats or data that you track that maybe people who are not as steeped in the gaming industry would not think to track?
Well, I thought about that a lot. When I came to Xbox, a lot of the focus that we had, rightly here, is on player stats, right? Monthly average users, engagement hours, DAU over MAU ratio, monetization per hour, like all of these things, like all of these things that are related to how our players are engaging on and monetizing in our platform. And I believe that is so core. But what I really learned in my time here is that a platform versus if you're running a game, that's really righteous. If you're running a platform, which I define as like a two-sided ecosystem, you sort of need to look at the inverse of that too, right? And so I spend a lot of my time essentially looking at developers and saying, okay, how many developers are developing for us? How many of them are shipping? Of those games are shipping, how healthy are they monetizing? What are their total economics on our platform across like subscription? Like how healthy are they? And those are the stats that I think are sort of an unconventional one for a consumer business to look at. But for us, because so much of our success is actually reliant upon making other creators successful, it's really core to the overall health of what we do.
When you think of like there's certain types of subscription businesses like Netflix or Spotify that have many of the same characteristics as like a Game Pass. But then there's also areas where like those where the similarities really break down. Like if you create a movie or a TV show, you could put that anywhere. Maybe Netflix buys the exclusive rights to it, or maybe Netflix is actually producing it. Same thing with a song that could be anywhere. Maybe it's exclusively on Spotify or something. Likely as it's going to be a lot of different places, including the radio, etc. But sometimes with games it might be just like only on this platform. Like your developer's only putting something on a particular platform or something like that. How do you think about it? And do you study these other businesses like the Netflix and Spotifys of the world?
Yeah, we studied them a ton. I mean, when we launched a subscription, we said, okay, like a game subscription doesn't exist. Do we think there's demand for it? How many people do we think would rather consume their content through subscription versus not? What does it mean to only have the content available on subscription versus giving an option? Like we looked at it from every which way. The fundamental difference though for us, I think, versus a lot of the examples you gave goes back to what I just talked about, which is Xbox isn't a product, it's a platform. So it carries a lot of products. And so we looked at our subscription and we said, well, look, what we're basically saying is that we embrace a diversity of business models. And a diversity of business models is important for consumers because some consumers would rather just buy one game and play it all year. And some consumers love the idea of having access to hundreds of games and being able to skip around and play. And it's a big difference, by the way, in games versus some other forms of media. There are some games where people will literally play them all year. Right? Like they live in the game, right? A Minecraft could be an example, or you could say, NBA is an example, or FIFA, Call of Duty, that's like 80% of their hours. most people don't spend 80% of their time watching only one TV show or only one listening to only one song or album. So they're just games because they live and extend, and a lot of the experience is actually based off the people you're connected with in that virtual world.
Usually, right. With any type of TV show, there's a limit to how much. Maybe you can't watch every Star Trek or something, because it goes there's so many, but there's some sort of limit to the number of things that you can go do. Whereas with League of Legends or something like that, like you could play that forever.
Very different. Yeah, and especially in multiplayer games, it's actually not just the game you're engaging in; it's the people you're connecting with. You could argue, and we often do, that games are actually metaverses, right? And so you're saying, okay, some people they just want to hang out in one type of world for a huge majority of the time. Other people are like, no, I want to try a whole bunch of things. Or I want to do single player experiences, story games that are really based off of a deep narrative that act more like TV shows in terms of their what we call replayability. Some games you play through them, you're not going to play it again, right? Because you know how it ends, you know what happens. And so we say, look, we support multiple models, and that's important because players like that, but also because developers like that. Because in games, the way that you choose to monetize can actually has a huge impact on the experience of the game itself. So if a game is free to play, like successful free to play games, there's all sorts of monetization at different stages. Oftentimes they're multiplayer, right? Where the people, like if you look at Fortnite, you could argue that the people are the game as much as the game itself, right? Very different than you say, okay, I want to have a dramatic, deep narrative. How am I going to drive monetization in that game? So if we did like what Netflix did, and we said, we're just a subscription business, it's all subscription, not subscription and advertising, but you get where I'm going. We would like accidentally really limit the scope of the games that could be successful in our world. So that's a big difference when we look at all these other consumer businesses. What we're doing is like, look, we're about enabling a set of business model diversity, giving people a ton of different levers, of which Game Pass is one, and other subscriptions that live on our platform is one, so that you have the maximum availability of games to play and experiences that people can have.
Okay, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. If I think of music, like I haven't bought like an actual CD or any type of download an album in probably over 10 years. I buy Spotify and it kind of works for me, and I go to concerts. But like back in the day, I buy like an album and I would just listen to that album over and over again. Yeah. So there is a change, but even when I bought that album over and over again, I was probably spending most of my time listening to music on the radio. Like I still want that diversity in music. You really want a diversity of things. You don't want to just listen to the same song over and over and over again. Yeah. Whereas in a game, you're right, some people want diversity.
Some people do. Yeah.
But actually quite a lot of people like they might want to play the same game like over and over again for a whole month and then move on to the next. They want like maybe that type of diversity, but they really want to immerse themselves. They want to spend often at least a dozen hours in a game before they move on to the next one or something. Okay, that's really interesting.
And the other thing I'm saying is like the song you're listening to, even way back when, that song is the same no matter how you bought it.
Yep. There's no choose your own adventure in the song or something.
Yeah, but in the case of a game, if a game has a lot of in-game monetization or is a free-to-play game, so the game is basically makes its money based on how you pay them as you're playing it, versus if you pay 100% for the game up front, the experience of playing the game is very different.
Yep. Okay.
Distinctly different. So we have to be super careful about that, because if we as a platform say, okay, we want all this thing or all this thing, some types of stories will simply cease to be created.
Now, gaming is inherently a very, very global thing, and often there's global teams and global distribution. I know that's something like you think about a lot, and maybe 20 years ago, that wasn't something people were thinking about as much. Like, how do you think when people are developing, distributing games, like how is that global piece a part of the strategy?
Well, first, the 3 billion people play games, as I was saying earlier, most of those people are not sitting in North America where we are sitting today. So we've got to be thinking about the needs, the price points, the game preferences of all of these people around the planet if we're actually going to build something that's relevant for them. So that's the first thing. And it's especially relevant as we think beyond our traditional, we call our traditional console business, and we start to think about how we can do things on PC and on mobile. The second thing, it was really accelerated by the pandemic, is work location has become, sort of gotten blown apart, right? Yep. And people are looking for the best talent to work on a project, irrespective of where they're located. And in the gaming industry, that has coincided with a massive rise in demand for the talent that makes games. Like if you just look at the industry over the last couple of years, the industry is going to be over $200 billion. There's been a lot of consolidation, which means that then a lot of people are looking to start new teams. So then the demand for gaming talent has just continued to go up and up and up. And so people are looking for people and saying, okay, you can live in all these different places. We've got to run our team globally distributed. But that's also super hard in a creative process. So there's just been a force that's really hit the industry around more and more teams having to figure out how to work on the cloud, how to collaborate remotely. But then lastly, I see it also as a huge opportunity. Like when you think about the gaming industry, especially in console, the vast majority of content in the gaming industry is effectively made in North America and East Asia. But we know that the vast majority of gamers actually aren't located in those regions. They're located around the world. And there's massive amounts of people who are going to be gamers who are going to come from regions that haven't even really started engaging deeply yet, like India and Africa. And so distributed development is a way that you can tap into the talent, the culture, the stories of those places in a way that actually enables you to continue to build relevant content. So my team is
there's movie making in India, which is very successful. There's movie making in Nigeria, which is very successful. The reason why it's so successful is they've tapped into the local culture, but there's got to be some gaming also that happens there as well.
There is, but a lot less relatively than those other segments right now. So you're like, okay, well, how do we give access to the tools? And we've done a bunch of stuff to open it up. Like we've taken our game development kit and we put it on GitHub. We've translated all of our documents. We've taken things out from behind NDA. We've simplified a lot of the tooling, right? To start to, we build things like we launched something last year called the Game Dev Virtual Machine that essentially packages all the sort of essential tools that you need early on in the game development process all into a VM, so teams can access it around the world and have the exact same setup. And so we're investing in all sorts of tools and products and services to sort of enable distributed and remote development, because we're seeing more and more demand for it. And we also believe that there's just going to be more demand for games from places that haven't traditionally been bedrock of the gaming industry.
Now, say for where I work, we saw data about physical places, and when Pokemon Go came out, we were very excited. Oh wow, these are like all these customers that are going to happen in the gaming world. But there haven't been like a ton of games like that have like encouraged people to interact in the real world. Like, where do you think that trend is going?
I say Pokemon Go in a lot of ways was a beautiful piece of lightning in the bottle, because it was a great IP, it was something very new, and it was really easy, right?
So it was fun too.
It was easy and fun, the way to connect. And so, and it was beautifully unique. And I think there'll be other games like that, right? I mean, I think there's a real demand for it, but it does take bringing together that unique combination of things to really deliver it and making it really accessible to people.
Now, I'd love to ask you a couple questions about Microsoft. I just find the whole company so fascinating. And in some ways, like 20 years ago or so, like you wouldn't say Microsoft was a good acquirer. But then recently, obviously in the gaming world, you've got ZeniMax. Now you've got Activision Blizzard, which is I think Microsoft's biggest deal to date. You've got there were rumors that Microsoft might want to purchase Discord, and then of course Microsoft made super successful acquisitions like LinkedIn and GitHub and stuff like that. Like, how do you think that? Why has Microsoft transitioned to be such an effective acquirer recently?
Well, I mean, look, there's so many things that have gone into that. I mean, I first want to really credit Satya with the overall Microsoft cultural transformation.
I think GitHub is just like an amazing acquisition, and just like,
yeah, there's a lot to it. But there's three things. There's sort of three core Microsoft cultural attributes. We talk about diversity, inclusion, customers obsessed, and growth mindset. And really, like if you like unpack growth mindset, I think the Microsoft of the past that you're referring to was a know-it-all culture, right? Like we know the best, not invented here. We're the big guys. We don't even need to visit Silicon Valley. Like we're Microsoft. Please, dock to our processes.
Yep.
And yeah, that doesn't make for a good acquisition situation, right?
Good
and
point.
It's also a company that's not going to acquire GitHub, right? They're going to, because it's a very different business model, different developer motion than everything else that have made Microsoft successful. And so I think when you look at why we have had our recent track record of success, we flipped it and we've instead approached it with, okay, you do something that we don't do. We want you to be part of our company because we want you to teach us that. Versus, we want you to dock to what we do. And that's been the real core of it when I look across LinkedIn, when I look at
GitHub. That's just like a cultural transformation that need to happen.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And then with our studios, the other thing we've really learned is there's a difference between acquiring a hard asset and a soft asset. So when you acquire a game studio, yes, you're acquiring some code and IP associated with the games made, but what you're really acquiring is the people who understand the story, the lore, the community. It's a creative process. It's different than I used to work in wireless. It's different than acquiring a whole bunch of Spectrum and towers. That's a hard asset. You can let all the people go, and you probably retained all of the enterprise value. In game studio is almost the other extreme. And so for us, a lot of our learning was, okay, we want these people to be part of our teams. How do we do that in a way that disrupts their core culture as least as possible, while giving them all of the good things that Microsoft gives them in terms of like safety, security, support, and all of that. And that was another really big lesson for us in the gaming team.
And large companies, even the best run large companies, can often have like amazingly frustrating bureaucracies. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you keep these employees motivated? Obviously, compensate them well, but how do you keep them motivated and stop them from going, jumping over to smaller companies?
Or, you want to come work here? You're hilarious. That's a great question. Well, look, there's a couple things. One, anytime I see something as a leader that has bureaucracy in it, I take a hard look at it and I say, how much do I need to cascade this to my team? And how much can I just handle it myself? I'll be honest, right? But some of it, you're like, okay, fine. I understand.
So you're like an API layer and you deal with bureaucracy and you don't.
I will go deal with this. I'll translate it down to my team in a way that's super simple and non-blocker for them so that they can understand it. So that's one thing. The second thing is there is a level at Microsoft where sometimes you're working through something like, oh, this is really hard. Like I've got a lot of interdependent points. I got to go talk to a ton of people. Like it's taking longer than I would if I could do it on my own. But the thing is that oftentimes you're doing things that you could never do on your own.
Of course, because it's so big.
You're
one of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah, and so your ability to have global impact, like at scale impact, is just completely different than when you go to a small company. And so I often spend a lot of time reminding my team, do you mean like you're working on this thing here, but see how it links to this huge thing that we can do over here, or see how we had an opportunity to help a team or a developer or a group of people in a really unique way that only Microsoft can. And people are very motivated by that, where they see their own tangible work scale, at the scale of millions and billions of people. Example I'll give is we had a team who we've been working with. They agreed to ship their game in Game Pass, and they're a team in Ukraine, and they're building a game called Stalker 2. And when the war in Ukraine started, first they asked for our help, to figure out how to move their team out of Ukraine. And I was able to connect them with someone in Microsoft Security who could give them some advice about how to get their team safe. Again, something I wouldn't have been able to do at a smaller company. And then they wanted to share an update on their game at our showcase this year. But for obvious reasons, a part of their team is actually involved in the war right now. Some of their team are no longer alive. They've had to relocate their team. They're behind where they thought they would have been on that game being ready. And so they really wanted to give an update on what was going on with them and drive awareness. A personal update on awareness of what was happening and what they were wrestling with. And we said, okay, yeah, we're going to put that in our extended showcase, and we're going to use our platform to help generate support for what they're doing. And we made that choice. And that's something where I know that we use the fact that we could reach millions and millions of people at Xbox to help this team that otherwise wouldn't have been able to have that scale. And that's what makes all of the meetings and discussions I had to have to make that happen more than worth it.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. Now, before Microsoft, you were at T-Mobile, and you're known for like helping that lead that team do the big T-Mobile turnaround. What's the big takeaway from that? Because it really was a very successful turnaround at T-Mobile. Like, what can you generalize from T-Mobile to whether it's at Microsoft or to other types of companies?
Gosh, there's so much. So I was the chief of staff for 2.5 years at T-Mobile, right as we were turning the company around when John Ledger came in, when we IPO'd and we launched our new strategy. And first of all, that was an incredible experience because I got to sort of see and be part of all of that. A couple of things I would generalize. First, never assume that someone's going to come save you. Just figure out what you've got to do and operate and execute and take the leap. I see a lot of teams get super risk averse, and then the fact that they're risk averse essentially paralyzes them into inaction, which ends up actually becoming the greater risk. Yeah. And at T-Mobile, very different than I think from really, really large tech companies. After AT&T tried to acquire T-Mobile and then that didn't go through, no one was going to save us, right? Like we were like, gosh, going postpaid no contract, that's scary. And we're like, but it's less scary than not doing anything. Yeah. Right? Let's jump. You have to make this work. Like all hands on deck. Stop doubting yourself. The second thing is when you're competing, a lot of people sometimes do a ton of benchmarking off of competitors and try to spend a ton of time how they can be like their competitor when they don't actually spend time thinking about what they should be and what their unique sources of advantage are and what space they occupy in the market. And I think T-Mobile did that super well. Yeah, so they counter-positioned
super well.
Counter-positioned, but also counter-positioned in a way that was actually grounded in deep economics. That's not outwardly obvious, but there was a deep economic logic that underpinned it. And I'll give an example. Like we had a program that we put out that included all international roaming in the standard plan. Okay. And you say, well, how can we do that and AT&T can't? Well, AT&T had a business model that was far more dependent on charging for international roaming because they had a lot more full prime business customers sitting in their install base. Yeah. T-Mobile didn't have prime customers in its install base. we were actually far more subprime customers who didn't travel. So we didn't have a massive reprice sitting in our P&L. So
I remember when you did that, like a lot of my friends who were big international travelers moved over to
exactly,
to
but it was net beneficial to us. You see, we knew that it couldn't be copyable because we understood how the economics of our competitors. So we actually had a strategic advantage that most people would say it's a disadvantage to be a lot subprime, but we didn't have to reprice our whole base successfully.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then the last thing is just like really, really know your customer. Like, do not lose sight of your customer. It seems so obvious, but so many teams get distracted by a million other things: bureaucracy, the internal meeting, the economics. When John Ledger came in as the CEO, and I remember this so clearly, he said, "Get me the phone number so that I can listen in on customer care calls." And then he would leave every night and dial into customer care calls for 3 hours. Not a single other member of the leadership team was doing that at the time. And then he would come in and be like, "So let me tell you what our customers are talking about." And I'll tell you the instant transformation of the understanding of what we need to do and what was really going on at the ground. The elimination of all of the layers between him, the CEO, and the customer was calling was incredible. And then he also made this decision. He said, at the time, we actually didn't have a concept of a company all hands. We didn't technically have the ability to talk to everybody in the company at once. We could talk to VPs, and then it would be like, and then it could be cascaded. He said, "No, figure out, Sarah, how I can talk to everybody in the company at once." I want to go into that again. It's like the elimination of the layers. Like, here's me explaining to the people who touch our customers the most every day what we need, and creating the sense that those people could also come back to him and share what they need. It's that customer obsession and eliminating all of the layers between you and the person who uses your product, I think, can be generalized everywhere.
Now, when you mentioned when you're at T-Mobile, you started as chief of staff to the CEO. That role that role has now become like way more popular. Like, what advice would you either give to CEOs to get the most out of their chiefs of staff, or to chiefs of staff to get most out of their roles?
Gosh, well, look, it's funny. It's a much more popular role. I'd also say it's a very specific role to the person who you're working with on both sides, right?
Different for everybody.
Everyone's like, "So what's it like?" And I'm like, "Well, first go figure out what the leader is like, and you could go from there, right?" But one thing I say is, like, pick someone who's not like you, who does some things that you're not as strong at, because that really helps you scale. Like, the more you become a broad scale leader, the more you want to be able to have all of the trains moving, and you want to be able to specialize in the things that I think truly make you great. And so I see a lot of people try to pick a chief of staff who's super like them, and I think that just leads to a double down of the same thing. And what you're actually looking at your chief of staff is someone you get along with, you're simpatico with them.
You can communicate really well with them,
right? But they actually need a different skill set to make sure everything is always coming together.
Okay, interesting. All right, a few personal questions. You and I have been friends for a long time, and I've heard you often talk about your father's influence on your business career. Like, what have you learned from him?
My father's really amazing. He was a CEO in the 90s. He was a Division I football player. He's an African-American man in his mid-70s. I mean, that's an incredible, statistical achievement.
Not a lot of African-American CEOs even today. And then, of course, 30 years ago, even fewer.
Exactly. And so a lot of times I look at what he achieved, and I remind myself that so many of the things that I'm able to do today are because of huge sacrifices that he made to change things in an environment that I can't even begin to conceive of. And the number one thing he always said to me is, he says, never let anybody tell you who you are and what you can do and what you cannot do. You can do anything you put your mind to. And that is the biggest lesson I learned from him.
Interesting, because there's a trope today that like there's a certain like victimhood, and really what he's saying is like you're not a victim. Like you have the right to believe in yourself. And like how do you think about like there's certain type of like more victim mentality today than there was in the past? Or
I mean, look, I think it's interesting. Like, look, sometimes people will come to me for advice, and they'll say, "Sarah, I really feel that I'm being subjected to discrimination, and you know what I mean, and people are treating me differently for this reason, or for my race, and gender, any number of reasons." And what I consistently say to people, I say that is likely almost 100% true. Now, let's talk about what you're going to go do.
Yeah. Because
the fact that that's true, it's important to acknowledge it. It's excellent data for your action plan, but you're the only person who's going to get yourself out of it, right? And when you get yourself out of it, you get the opportunity to make sure that other people don't experience that, right? That's actually the ultimate goal, and that's what truly scales. And that's how I think about it. Yeah, all this stuff is happening, but each of us is a product not of what happens to us, but what we choose to do with it.
Now, you're one of the most high-profile Black women in tech, and how does that like give you a perspective on doing things maybe differently in business that people may not appreciate?
I think for me, a long time ago, I concluded that my greatest impact at work was what I was going to be able to do to open up opportunities for others and for them to see it's possible. So once I concluded that's why I was doing what I was doing, it's very clarifying for me. Like, sometimes you'll be in a meeting and you're trying to make a decision, or you're debating between two states. But when I understood my true purpose, all of those things became a lot easier. It's a lot easier, I think, for me to really just focus on, hey, let's just like create the most successful, inclusive business outcome we can. Let's not focus on politics or optics or a whole bunch of other things I think sometimes people really worry about that can get in the way of driving towards true success. And that clarity came to me when I realized that I'm just turning up because I want to leave the world a better place for my children, and for anybody's child who was said no or told they couldn't do something. And so if I lose my whole sense of purpose in this, then there was no point.
And actually, like in Seattle, like the percentage of African Americans in Seattle is not very, very high. So you're just like the pool for like a Microsoft to pull from is much lower. Whereas where I live in Northern Virginia, like the percentage of African Americans is really high. Is way higher than maybe the national average. And so you see a lot more, certainly where I live, a lot more African Americans in leadership positions doing things of like CEOs, et cetera. How much of that can we say, okay, that's why tech doesn't have a lot, or is there something about tech that means it's not as good?
I don't know. It's probably both, Oren, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, we do a lot of work at Microsoft on geographic diversity. Like we opened an Atlanta office, we opened a development center in Africa, and we do see that helps so much. I personally have actually extended my team. I started hiring developers in Latin America. Helps a lot because, we're not just working, we're living our lives. And part of your living your life is being able to be near your family, your friends, your culture. And when you ask someone to pursue a career at the cost of that, a lot of people aren't going to want to do that. And so being open to broader geographies, I think, is a large part of it. But then I think there's a whole bunch of other factors around access and education that have gotten better over time, and we're starting to see the results of that. But just take real concerted work and effort over generations.
And one thing is like unique to you is you also spent a lot of time in the UK growing up. Like, what did you take away from that, and how do you think like that has affected either yourself and as you think about yourself today?
Well, one of the interesting things about the UK is the entire way the UK thinks about social hierarchy, race, culture is very different than the way the US thinks of it. So frequently in the UK, people would come up to me and they would say, well, which one of your parents is white? And I would say, what do you mean, which one of my parents is white? And they're like, well, you're obviously not 100% African, so which one of your parents is white? and I'm like, well, that's actually true. I'm not 100% African. In fact, probably, although I haven't had it tested, if you tested me, I'm probably more white and Native American than I am African. But in the US, you see that's quite common. So I am labeled a certain way based off of that. But you go to the UK, they have a completely different label for that.
Interesting that someone would even ask you about that. Like,
yeah, well, it was just different, you know. And then my accent played a lot into it as well, right? Like I had like,
clearly American. Yeah.
Well, I was American, but then I went to a good school, and I went to a private school, and then I got like this upper middle class.
Got it. Are you like an Eton person versus
not quite Eton, like a little bit below? You know what I mean? And so people use that as an interpretation, and so I found that actually quite freeing because it taught me that it was not about me. It was a societal structure that could be totally different when I moved from one place to another. And so often, if you only live in one structure that has one system, you start to actually internalize those messages that the society has put out there about your worth. But when I learned at the age of 11, I was like, oh, this is just all like, smoke and mirrors.
Right. Everyone has their own like weird sense of things.
Yeah.
Okay, this has been great. Okay, last question we ask all of our guests. What conventional wisdom or advice do you think is generally bad advice?
Oh my gosh. I thought of an answer for this and now I don't see it on my piece of paper. Oh, I found it. Okay, do you want me to ask it? So you can edit that?
Okay, all right, okay, last question we ask all of our guests. What conventional wisdom or advice do you think is generally bad advice?
Okay, I don't know if people give advice on this, but I think there's just still this perception out there that vulnerability is weakness. And I really believe that's a naive point of view, that nobody achieves anything on their own. There is no such thing as individual achievement. We're all a product of like the people who created us, the people next to us, the people who succeed us, and that is actually fundamental to leadership. Like true leadership is enabling others. It has nothing to do with you.
And you think like, because it does seem like the conventional advice is now like be vulnerable. Like that does seem like if we had to say what's the conventional advice, like it does seem like everyone has moved to that, at least in the last 5 years or so. Do you disagree? Do you think like
no? I think people say that and then they use the word they
use the word, but they're not really vulnerable.
Right. That's what I think. I think people are still very. I mean, look, maybe it's different in different places. I think people are still very enamored with the idea that it's them. Yeah, it's all them.
Yeah, interesting. All right, this has been amazing. All right, thank you, Sarah Bond, for joining us, World Desk. I follow you at Sarah Bond, at Twitter. I encourage all of our listeners to engage with you. Is that the best place for people to engage with you?
That's the best place. I do LinkedIn as well. We're plain old Sarah Bond.
Okay, there we go. Okay, that's good as well. All right, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you, Warren. I really appreciate it.
That is benefiting from.
I get the easy job because I get to introduce the people who everybody here and everyone in the world knows. We've got the founders of the largest foundation in the world, and the two most important philanthropists in the world right now. $300 million towards vaccine treatments, more than $1 billion for production distribution, more than $1 billion to Gavi, with more to come. But Bill and Melinda Gates are putting tremendous amount of time, money, and brain power towards solving this scourge. We appreciate it. We appreciate you guys joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Please, and I love the couch. Before we get into it, I really want to focus obviously on COVID, but before that, Melinda, actually, made some news this week with Mackenzie Bezos, your announcement about the Equality Can't Wait Challenge. You're putting $30 million into, basically to challenge ideas to move the needle in terms of gender equality. Can you maybe talk about the genesis of that and why you're doing this now?
Sure. I believe that we have to get gender equality here in the United States. It is imperative, and there are several barriers that hold women back, and we have to really, if we're going to bring women up, we have to invest in things to help them with their power and their influence. If we invest in 4 key sectors, such as politics, finance, tech, and media, it tells our stories, and we started to get gender equality in those 4 segments of society, we would change society at large. And so Mackenzie and I have been talking about this actually for quite some time, and this happened to be the right time to make the announcement, but we're looking for bold new ideas of how do you actually move gender equality in the United States. And so we thought this platform, Lever for Change, was the perfect place to announce that, and we will start to see candidates come forward, and we'll make some prize-winning announcements hopefully next summer.
Okay, guys, we just had Dr. Stoffels talking about timelines. It's the biggest question in the world, and you guys are right at the center of it. When are we going to have, whether it's a therapeutic or a vaccine, but when is the world going to be able to get back to normal? You guys are running point on it. Help.
Well, hopefully one of the 3 vaccines that are furthest along end up being both safe and efficacious. The Moderna went into human trials first, then the Oxford AstraZeneca, and then the Johnson & Johnson that you just heard about from Paul Stoffels. And so the animal data gives us pretty good hope that one of those will work. Doesn't look like they'll work as a single-dose vaccine, probably a 2-dose vaccine. If those don't work, then there's about a 6-month gap before you get the other candidates coming forward. And so to have one in the first half of next year, it'll have to be those 3. And we are quite hopeful and working in parallel to get the manufacturing capacity, not just for rich countries, but for the developing countries, where actually right now the majority of the cases are not in the rich countries anymore. They're in South America, Africa, Southeast Asia, including India, sadly seeing a big increase.
Yep. So maybe you can delve into that because there's so much public focus on, okay, we have the vaccine, but it's not even halfway there, because if we don't immunize, if we don't get herd immunity, or we don't get a large majority of the world immunized, then we really haven't beat this. So what's the timetable on that?
Well, if you say that you've got to get, say, 80% of the world's population with a 2-dose vaccine, that's over 10 billion doses. The two of the constructs, the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson, are pretty scalable in their manufacturing. That is, you can do single plants that turn out over 600 million doses per year. And so we're going around the world and saying, okay, where do we reserve? Where in the US, Europe, India, China, where do you get that capacity? Which, if both AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson work, you can actually see a plan that's starting to come together that we'd be able to make over a 2-year period pretty close to that many doses. But it won't be overnight, and so you'll have a 2-year period manufacturer if things go well. You will have to have some prioritization of who's at the front of that line and who's not at the front of that line.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important to say about these vaccines is the two that Bill's mentioning at the top of the list, the Oxford AstraZeneca one and the J&J, do not require cold chain, and that is huge for the world, whereas the Ebola vaccine and some of these other ones that are on the list do require very difficult cold chain, like minus 80 Celsius, and that is very difficult in many places in the world, not impossible. One of the reasons we're so involved in this is that you don't want the first vaccines to go to the highest bidding countries. You need to make sure that there's equitable distribution. So if you just look at healthcare workers around the world, there's 60 million healthcare workers. They deserve to get the vaccine first. They're the ones dealing with this on the front lines, trying to keep us all safe. And then you have to start to tier from there based on the countries and the populations. But here in the United States, really, it's going to be Black people who really should get it first, and many indigenous people, as well as people with underlying symptoms, and then elderly people. They're the ones who all deserve to get that vaccine first.
Well, that makes sense. So how do we make that happen? Especially, how can philanthropy help, or is it only government policy? How do we get to that necessary place?
Yeah, we've had a lot of philanthropists come in on this in various ways, including what we call the Therapeutics Accelerator. A number of generous philanthropists have helped support that. Philanthropy can move a little bit quicker, support things that haven't gone through the same complex process. In the long run, the really big funding, as you're getting up into many billions, that will be governmental money. But the idea of getting the right scientists, the early candidates back, getting the factories done in parallel, philanthropy will play a key role. We helped fund a trial in the UK that you just saw came out with a corticosteroid, dexamethasone, that showed really good results. And that trial network had been set up several years ago to be ready for an epidemic. That's not a complete solution. It's about a 20% reduction in the death rate, but it's a step. And there are other things, including monoclonal antibodies, as therapeutics that'll come out even before the vaccine is fully available.
And I think one thing for philanthropists to understand is we are lucky as a world that we have two institutions. We have this Gavi, which is the Vaccine Alliance that was created 20 years ago. That is the mechanism that the rich world governments, I know you're doing a panel on this, have been giving money to, and that's our pull mechanism to pull the vaccine through and get it out to countries. It's amazing how the pharmaceutical companies are working together in ways we've never, ever in 20 years of doing this work have seen before. So we have that fund as a mechanism. Private philanthropy can come into that fund. It's really, really helpful. We put a lot of money into that fund. There's another fund, which is the Global Fund, which gives AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria medicines around the world. Again, that's been set up since the time of President Bush. And that fund is very good at getting medicines out. So they will be the ones to help us get a therapeutic medicine out all over the world equitably once one's available.
Well, that's always key, again, for philanthropy not to be redundant either. So if we're talking about Global Fund, Gavi for distribution, tell us about your work with production. You guys have put a lot into production, and how that could be a model for other philanthropists in terms of trying to help in that middle ground. We have the vaccine, and then we have the distribution, and then in the middle of the production, and you're focusing on that too, and how philanthropy can play a role there.
Well, normally you get a medicine approved, and then you can start to build up the manufacturer. Here, because the impact on people's lives and the economy is measured in the trillions, the idea of putting forward at risk a small number of billions to shave a few months off of that availability, it makes sense. Now, exactly who should do that is tricky. And so we've been talking to other funders. Usually the United States plays a role in global problem solving. So rather than withdrawing from WHO, they'd be involved collaborating with other countries, not just trying to, cast blame. So it's a tricky situation where the U.S. has sort of turned inward on this one. There are some good things happening in the U.S. since we're trying to stitch the different country efforts together. The European leaders are trying to fill that vacuum. So we don't yet have it all in place. If those two vaccines are successful, we can start to see how it could come together. But we also need to back a few other candidates in case there's some problem. We won't really know about side effects until we go through those large trials.
Well, also, this is a great example. I mean, philanthropy, and you two have been at the forefront of this, sometimes requires failure. And this is a case where we're going to go down roads that are expensive and necessary to get us to the other side. So I think that's a great point. Yeah, Bill, you mentioned, the U.S. Should we be, we've got 189 philanthropists on this call right now, probably 2/3 Americans. Should we be optimistic? I mean, a lot of America's opening up. A lot of America's getting back to work, but then you look at Florida, Texas, Arizona. Should we be feeling good or not so good right now?
Well, sadly, the death rate is probably not going to go down much from where it is. Hot weather helps. And so as you get back into October, the force of infection will go back up again. The current death rate, which is still pretty serious, about 800 a day, that is benefiting from the seasonality. And, people are becoming more lax in general, both the policies and the behavior. And so it's hard to see, even though it'll get a little bit warmer here for a bit, the death rate's not going to go down much. And so Dr. Fauci's statement that, hey, we're still in this first wave, that will get more intense as we get into the fall, that's, what everybody should assume. Until we have a miracle therapeutic, which the only one that has even a chance of that would be the monoclonal antibodies, or we've got the vaccine out, this thing will be stalking the land. And, the U.S. has chosen not to be as strict as most of the Asian countries, particularly China, but also some of the others who started out early. They've gotten their number of infections down to very small numbers, whereas the U.S. still has a pretty gigantic number of infections.
Yep. Now, Melinda, I've heard you talk about disaggregating data
So tell us why that's important and how that can help bring solutions to the right population.
Yeah, so we have to have disaggregated data. Otherwise, we wouldn't know who's being disproportionately affected with this virus. And it helps us understand where to apply resources. And so we are just in the process with our many disease modeling organizations that we work with, trying to get that data from the states. Not all states have it and have it in a way that we can use it. But if we can use that data, then we know to say, okay, this is where we need to make sure we apply the resources. And quite honestly, apply the vaccine first. The testing, the therapeutic when it becomes available, and the vaccine. Those are going to be the hot spots and where you're going to want to go to help affect the most change for this country. And I have to say, it is why you've seen Bill and I be a bit critical of the current U.S. government, just because if we were doing testing today, our only tools today are social distancing, masks, and testing. And so if we had been doing testing in the right national way, we could be more in the shape that Germany's in, where you test and you do contact tracing. That is going to be really, really important and continue to be important through the fall when we see this next big wave of this epidemic coming through.
So what we heard from you guys is that the second wave is a when, not an if. And with that in mind, all right, so President Trump, finds religion, calls you guys and says, what should we do? What is the game plan? If you had to give us an elevator pitch that this group can spread to the world here in the States about what a more effective policy would be.
Well, just usage of masks alone makes a substantial difference. And the compliance to mask usage in South Korea, China, Japan, it's very impressive. In the US, partly because of the lack of leadership examples, our mask compliance is actually not very good. A mask is not that expensive. It's not that ugly. So when you're in those situations where you're near to people, it should be used. We're learning more and more about testing capacity is going up if we can get it, some breakthroughs on testing scale and target it appropriately, particularly anyone who has contact with older people or those at a greater risk. It will help us bring the numbers down. But and we don't know, are we going back to say 2,000 deaths a day like we were in April? That's hard to say. It's possible that we will. So 2020 is going to be a very tough year because the U.S. just hasn't been willing to drive the numbers to the same low level that many other countries did.
Yeah, so the elevator pitch is test, contact trace, isolate and quarantine, and wear a mask, and role model wearing a mask. Every single person should be wearing a mask without exception.
We spent the first half of this session talking about equity and opportunity. Let's talk about that in the context of COVID and how this affects us again around the world, especially here in the States, based on race and gender. There are differentiations, and maybe you could handle race and the gender, but maybe you could delve into that a little bit.
Yeah, it's certainly troubling that where the disaggregated data come through, it does show not only the age thing, which is number one, and the comorbidities at number two, but also a significant racial component. And that's likely to be multifactorial, partly general health condition to begin with, partly job type, household size, multi-generational household, living in the dense parts of the urban areas. And we're also looking at, all sorts of medical things. What is it that we can intervene to cut this down? So if in advance, if you'd asked, would there be different outcomes by race, we would not have expected that. It's a stunning and disappointing result that we're seeing in many countries. The UK has seen this as well. For a while, the disease did not take off in Africa. Sadly, it looks like that was just a delay in it getting going because now, despite the younger age mix, the cases in South Africa and other parts of Africa are taking off, even somewhat behind Asia and South America, but still with a very, very scary trend. So there's a lot to be done on the intervention side to reduce that exposure, to prioritize the protection that the inner city communities deserve on this.
Yes, and I'm just going to add on the race. I think also it's exposed for us the gaps in our healthcare system. You are not treated equally in this healthcare system, and that is something that needs to be fixed. On the gender side, I think again it's exposing the gaps that were already there that we so often as Americans don't want to look at. So just to give you some statistics, women are losing their jobs at a disproportionate rate to men. A lot of it has to do with the sectors that women work in, like retail and hospitality. But even as people start to go back to work, fewer women are coming back to the workforce as a percentage compared to men. So those are the statistics for the United States. Now, the other issue that's going on is we know women are doing 2.5 more times unpaid labor at home, and they and their husbands are reporting that when it comes to teaching the kids, trying to make sure they're online, fixing the meals, cleaning up, babysitting the kids, caring for the elderly, women are doing that more at home, whether you're a white collar female worker or whether you're a person who lives in the inner city and you get on the bus to go to your job. And so what it means is that we cannot reopen this economy the way we want to unless we deal with the unpaid labor. And we are the only industrialized nation in the world that doesn't have a paid family medical leave policy. That's just the truth. And so we have it now in 8 states and in DC. We finally have it for federal military workers. And you saw Congress address this in 2 of the stimulus packages. But we have to update our thinking and realize that we're not in society anymore where the man, if it's a 2-person headed household that's married with a child, it's not that the man goes off to work and the woman stays home with the children. That was what was going on at the mid-century. But today, of most married families with a child, 64% of them both go out and work. So if we're going to take care of the family and take care of capitalism and the economy, you've got to address that issue. And it is absolutely addressable. Many countries have done it with finesse. There are many great policies out there in the United States. It's time we did it.
We say, many people taking credit for the saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think you are seeing movement in terms of public opinion on that. Speaking of public opinion, let's talk about public trust. We seem to be in a strange kind of post-science moment where all this amazing work, as Steve Forbes and Mike Milton were talking about warp speed to get to a vaccine, but a vaccine is only so useful if people don't take it or don't trust it. What do we do about that?
Well, there's certainly a lot of misinformation. It's great people are paying attention to vaccines in a way, but a lot of that's the false data. We'll see as the vaccine comes out. We don't need absolutely everyone to take it, but we need a pretty high percentage to take it to get the protection that eventually brings this epidemic to an end. And then things like going to a big stadium will be reasonable to do again, which we shouldn't be doing that right now. So the digital era has brought a lot of misinformation, and with the pandemic, vaccines in particular, I hope that's not getting out into the mainstream.
It's interesting. We have such a short memory as a country, but look, we lived through something scary like this. It was called polio, and it affected so many families in the United States where they were terrified, for good reason, to let their children go out and play, because we at the time didn't know where polio came from, and then we had to wait for the Salk and Sabin vaccine. Once those vaccines came out, people lined up in droves for those vaccines. So my hope is that this time will eventually remind people the importance of public health. We forget in this country that diseases like measles are way more infectious than COVID-19 is. I mean, for every person who gets measles, they tend to infect 8 to 9 other people. It is so infectious. We can have another one of those come along. So I'm hopeful that, as the vaccine comes and people do start to use it, it will quell down some of these kind of silly conspiracy theories that are out there.
Well, speaking of conspiracy theories, how are you guys doing personally? I mean, you're now both the subject of a lot of these conspiracy theories. You're doing amazing work and putting a lot of time and money and effort into it, and then this is to some degree what you get. How is that personally affecting you both?
Well, the disinformation is it's confounding on the one hand. And on the other hand, we're still just putting our heads down and doing the work. It doesn't change our daily life to have those conspiracy theories out there. We know they're not true. They certainly come up a little bit with the kids in the household. By the way, we do have our son came home early from college, unfortunately for him. So that conversation comes up, but it doesn't change what we do on a day-to-day basis, luckily.
Feel you a little bit amused.
Well, I hope it remains a humorous thing, that there aren't anything more that comes of that. It's not like we're going to back off or anything. Some news channels have been better than others on these things. And, it just shows there's certain primal concerns about, medicine and science and experts that when people are worried, they're kind of more open-minded to unusual explanations.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of anxiety for good reason in the country right now, and a lot of tension, and people are more glued at home. They have more time. So in some ways, maybe this was inevitable, but I know my husband is not vaccinating people, putting a microchip in our arm, because that technology doesn't even exist, and he's never uttered the words out of his mouth. So,
but speaking, of other tricky issues right now, you guys mentioned WHO. Clearly the world has never needed that organization more, and yet, it's become political lightning rod. Listen, there are a lot of things, a lot of problems there too. What can we do to forge a consensus in this country, here in the States? I'm sure you've got a lot of people around the world that kind of shaking their head a little bit, but how can we forge a consensus to not make this a controversial issue?
Yeah, so one thing I want to say before we answer the question is we thought long and hard about whether to speak out in favor of WHO, and we knew we were going to come under attack, but it was the right thing to do. We know this institution. We've worked with this institution now for 20 years. It is not perfect. It's not even close to perfect, but it is what the world set up after World War II to deal with things like this pandemic. And so it is caught now between the tensions between the United States and China, those geopolitics. But we felt as philanthropists, it was incredibly important to put our voices behind a partner we know to be true but imperfect. So that is why we spoke out. As to what others can do, I don't know. Do you want to take that?
Well, at some point there needs to be a responsible plan for how the U.S. cooperates with other countries about health things. WHO is involved in smallpox eradication, and U.S. Our relationship with WHO is key there. Polio, we are close. We're down to just a few countries. That's very much WHO, where both our money, U.S. money, other countries give to that. And so, you hope that in terms of protecting people's lives, there eventually is a serious discussion about how the world works together. Even this issue of getting the vaccine out, we're hoping the U.S., in the same way it did step up for smallpox, malaria, and polio, that it steps up and HIV, that the U.S. does step up. And so the Congress seems very interested in the U.S. not being so weak that it's other countries that figure out these global problems. It creates a vacuum. It erodes the kind of relationship and admiration and self-confidence people have had in us as a country. And so, I just say, rationality will reappear from someone at some point, and the U.S. will get engaged in its generosity and the world body that is charged with pandemic coordination.
Yeah, I think one thing it's important for the philanthropists on the phone to also know is just that WHO, as Bill said, is on the front lines of eradicating polio. Well, that's important for polio, but why else is it important? Well, when Ebola broke out in East Africa and it made it to Lagos, as we know, one of the most populous cities in the world, and Ebola came to Lagos, immediately those polio resources that WHO had, we had funded, Rotary had funded, immediately those resources got flipped, and that polio clinic got flipped to be an emergency response clinic. And they immediately went out and did all the contact tracing and quarantining. If that hadn't happened, we would have seen so much Ebola be flown to New York and San Francisco and spread all over the United States. So the world got lucky on Ebola. There are other hemorrhagic fevers out there. And so if we don't have a functioning WHO, you're not going to see an immediate response like that.
Yeah, I think if anything comes out of COVID right now, it's that we are strengthening. There will be a stronger global healthcare system emerging from this. And again, you guys have been talking about this for years, and unfortunately, it's come true. Tell us about. I know our knowledge partner is the Global Citizen on this event, and you're working with the Global Citizen, with the European Commission, Bloomberg Philanthropies, the Global Goal Unite for Future campaign, the Giving Summit coming up. Tell us about that, how that plays in everything you're talking about right now.
Well, sadly, the pain of this epidemic, although it's gigantic in the rich countries, including the United States, and it's gigantic in a way that's very inequitable. Inner city students, racial minorities, poor households. It's even more challenging as you get to the developing countries where their health system is not as strong, their ability to isolate because they have to go out and get food on a daily basis. It's going to be very tough. And so the question, do we pull together as a world to get the tools out to everyone to help them recover from what's happened here? Global Citizen is a great organization that's got artists to come in to express their values about these things, to give a platform to the government leaders who want to talk about their commitments to help out with these things. So, it's Global Citizen's been absolutely fantastic, and they've stepped up. Here in June, they're going to have a big event.
Well, speaking of big events and big anniversaries, we're running short on time, but right now we're hitting the 10th anniversary of the Giving Pledge, and we have 2/3 of the founders here. Tell us on this. Again, there's a lot going on in the world, but I don't want to miss this opportunity to ask kind of your reflections 10 years in terms of how satisfied you are and where you see us going forward with this.
Yeah, I think both Bill and I and Warren, Bill spoke with Warren yesterday. We couldn't be more pleased about where the Giving Pledge is today. We would not have imagined 10 years ago that we'd have this many pledgers from this many different countries around the world.
And I think, I'm sorry? What number are we up to?
think we're up to 169 pledgers from 28 different places. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe slightly more.
Yeah, slightly more than that. So many of whom are on the phone, including like Stride Misiawa from Africa, and Sarah Blakely I know you had on. I think the other surprise to us has been the learning that we've done as a community. Like there are some pledgers I know for Bill and I that I just don't think we ever would have met who are doing unbelievable work, say, on prison reform, with finesse, and we're learning what they're applying to that area, and we can apply those things to our own philanthropy. So I would say we're all three of us really pleased. The other thing I would say that Warren reminded us as trustees when we spoke in May about our own foundation that I want to say to the philanthropists on this video call is this is our time. We as philanthropists will be remembered by what we do during this time of this epidemic. And there are so many places you can invest, whether it's in food insecurity in your own city, whether it's helping with race issues, whether it's helping with COVID specifically. We've seen so many philanthropists step up and do creative things in their communities. And even if you feel like you don't know the area that much as you'd like, or it's not quite as strategic as you'd normally like to be, there are lots of places to fill gaps that the government's not filling. And I do think we will be judged based on our time here as philanthropists by what we did during this epidemic to help.
Going forward, have you had any thoughts about linking the Giving Pledge with the idea of Give While You Live and accelerated giving? Because I think it's spot on. You can't look at what's going on in the world now and think that your money's going to be better spent in 10 years. I mean, it feels like a now moment.
Yeah, I think one of the things we put more into is collaborative giving. The Giving Pledge itself doesn't give to any cause. It's not pulling money. But we've seen a lot of the members go into things like Co-Impact, which is international in scope, Blue Meridian, which focuses on the U.S. and poverty, and see that they can learn and get leverage working together. Those charities are stepping up to say, okay, given the challenges of the epidemic or the awareness of the inequities that are out there, how can they change their program? And so the expertise you get out of collaborative giving, we're really emphasizing that, particularly for people who get started out, and therefore to spend a higher percentage during their lifetime.
Yeah, and we're trying to role model that and do it ourselves. That's why we've stepped up with even more during this COVID time. We've also opened up a platform online called The Power Of, where people can go and look with finesse at places that need money in their community, whether that's around race or whether that's around poverty or COVID, or they can even say, I want to go give money in the community that I grew up in, and I want to give back there. How do I do that? So I think there are lots of ways that philanthropists can give right now. I think it's about all of us role modeling as a community.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was
he had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was a little, well, he
had his mask
smiling with
on.
his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was a little, well, he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was a little, well, he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was a little, well, he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was a little, well, he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was a little, well, he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case against Apple, bringing on an antitrust case. Epic, of course, the maker of Fortnite. There we go. We had the live shot.
Brief.
Got Tim Cook.
He's signed again. He looked relaxed as he was on the way in.
Smiling.
Well, we don't know he's smiling.
Defending. He was a little, well, he
had his mask
smiling
on.
with his eyes.
Yeah.
After defending the company, of course, against what is a serious antitrust case that could have reverberations for Apple services and its App Store.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
We want to take you live now to Tim Cook, California, where he is coming out of the elevator after having just testified as a witness in the Epic Games case again.
Evolved to make console games like Gears of War.
1991.
Enchanting video game-like world has
made this here with all the ice on in the book.
Please, can you welcome onto the stage cross-platform? How significant do you think that's going to be in the years to come, and the work that you're doing?
% fee payment service. Some developers might use it, most would not. And what we need is fair competition.
The argument that Apple would make is everybody has decided how they want to accept payments at different price mechanisms, meaning they would say 85% of the apps on the store are free. They service them for free. They provide that service for free. Developer software, you can use that for free. They don't charge for that. By the way, in fairness to them and to you, the Unreal Engine, I believe, you charge for the Unreal Engine. If you want to use the engine, you have a price. Apple's decided they're not going to take a cut of that, but the way that they've created the economics for themselves is to have this commission. So I'm just trying to figure out how you think about these things.
Well, you know, companies sell products to consumers, and that's awesome. We sell our product to consumers and developers. Apple sells theirs. What's wrong here is the tying of different products and forcing, you know, more than a billion consumers who've bought an iPhone to use only the Apple Store. Apple doesn't tell consumers when they buy an iPhone. Consumers don't sign a contract agreeing to only use Apple's Store. Consumers have no voice in this whatsoever. They purely force, through technical measures, that other stores cannot exist on their platform, right? And you know, you can compare it to lots of different business models. Epic sells our engine to people, but there's a vibrant and competitive engine market. And most importantly, engines are not tied to other platforms, products, or services. Right. You can use Unreal Engine or you can use Unity Engine. If you use it, you can support dozens of platforms that both engines support, and you can move freely between them, and you can choose to adopt other services. You can use your own payment processing service. You can use your own social and friend system. None of these traditional businesses force customers, as a term of accepting one product, to use a whole suite of other products. They're priced diseconomically.
But what about the argument, and we can put it in this context, Fortnite you talk about Fortnite as a platform. I believe the Fortnite platform right now is not open. There's not a competitive marketplace where others can effectively develop on top of the platform, can create their own in-app purchases right now, unless you want to make some news today.
Well, you know, we're evolving in that direction. Fortnite started out as just Epic's Battle Royale mode, and now there's Fortnite Creative, where tens of millions of creators are sharing their content with their friends and with the general public. And there's a little bit of a business model there, but it's in the very early stages of development.
But could you ever imagine offering people, just whoever wants to sell on top of it and to give you nothing for it?
Yeah, absolutely. And for example, the Epic Games Store, we operate a game store on PC that's done hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions with customers selling third-party games. So we have a lot of experience with the costs and operating realities of this. And We do not require, as a term of using our store, to use Epic's payment service for in-app purchases. You can use our payment service, and we'll charge you a 12% fee to Epic. That's our commission rate. Or you can use your own payment service and keep all of the revenue. Right. And I think that's the way that stores should operate. They're a bundle of services, and each one is free to compete with each other. And we're happy to operate this store and to provide the service to developers, even if we don't receive money from it, because having customers regularly visit our store to obtain the software is incredibly valuable to us. But companies pay many dollars per user to acquire users to their store.
How important, though, do you think it is for you, for example, on your own game of Fortnite, to effectively control the platform, to control what happens on it from a quality control perspective and other things? I mean, part of the argument that an Apple would make, some would say fairly, I imagine you would say unfairly, is they say the phone, the product that you buy, the user buys because they want the entire experience. And part of that experience is a curated app store where they are preventing viruses and malware and other kinds of software. They're vetting all of that, and that the Apple consumer is buying into that. That's part of the value proposition. It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Look, I think you're falling into the trap that Apple has set of
You just broke some news.
We did. It's a great day for us. We announced that we did an acquisition this morning of Texture. Texture is an app that has been in the iOS store. It's beloved by our iPad users because you get access to all of the great magazines from Condé Nast, from Time, Meredith, Hearst.
How does acquiring Texture advance the grand strategy of Apple News?
I think that there are a few things that we always cared about in Apple News. First of all, we wanted to bring great articles from trusted sources in a beautiful layout. Obviously, Texture, with the brands that I just told you about, they have magazines from Esquire to Vanity Fair to Time to Sports Illustrated, some of the best magazines in the world. So they have some incredible content, and content that takes a long time to create.
So let's keep talking about acquisitions. The Texture acquisition is a big deal for Apple News. Let's talk about Apple TV and the sort of grand strategy here. You are sitting at the top or near the top of a company that has a market value of $910 billion, give or take. I'm sure you have more up-to-date statistics. You could, it seems to me, conceivably buy Netflix. You could even buy Disney if you wanted to. Do you want to buy Netflix or Disney?
Look, the good news is that both Netflix and Disney are great partners of ours and have been with us from the very beginning. Look, generally, the history of Apple, we haven't made huge acquisitions. And generally, we haven't done that.
Why haven't we?
Well, the reason we haven't done that is we tried to go, it's the old Gretzky quote, skate to where the puck is going, not to where it is.
I recognize skating to where the puck is going to be. At the same time, you have made a number of content acquisitions that do feel pretty traditional. I mean, you've got the Reese Witherspoon, Jennifer Aniston project, you have Damien Chazelle, you have a Steven Spielberg documentary, I believe. You've got a number of other things that sort of look like the acquisitions that an Amazon or a Netflix or, whoever might make. There is a feeling that you have to have this huge, enormous tentpole project. Why are you doing these sort of like staking little claims in the content space? Why not just go big and buy Netflix?
Well, we're all in. We're completely all in. There's a difference, though. We're not after quantity. We're after quality. We don't try to sell the most smartphones in the world. We don't try to sell the most tablets. We try to make the best one, and hopefully the other piece happens. And so when you think of content, first of all, and you can see that here in South by Southwest, great storytelling is what's important. And you get great storytelling from big name people, and you also get it from new and up and comers. But you need to have a great story. I learned that in the early days when I was really, my whole background's computers. I got to meet Steve. Steve was running Pixar at the time, and Pixar had done like 2 or 3, 4 hits in a row. And I said, like, why is Pixar always doing hits and yet others are not? And we talked about the fact that it's all about the storytelling. And if the story's not right, they go back and do it again. And they get it right. And so great storytelling is what's important. And so what we hope we're doing is that we hope we bring some amazing, great quality stuff. We'll have a few surprises. We think there's a real advantage in technology. We'll talk a little bit more about this as we talk about like sports and the TV app. We think there are ways to leverage technology to make the viewing experience even better.